always looking out, comparing me with how it used to be. Not the right fit, the right fit at all. Doomed from the start, you were always after someone else's heart. In love with my best friend. How did I find myself in this mess? When not the right fit, the right fit at all. Could you lead me down this garden path? You're the only one I wanna give my heart to. Why couldn't you tell me this at the start? Now I'm the one that has been lied to. When not the right fit, the right fit at all. When not the right fit, the right fit at all. At all. At all. At all. I think one person can't hear me. Hope everyone else can.
I can hear you. You good?
Just gonna jump into a little drop D, the key of rock and roll. Here's a little stripped back version of Seabass's last single, Brains. Late night, haven't seen it for a while. Street lights flickering and out. I need you. I want you to come back home. I need you. I need you. Why can't I tell you what I wanna say to you? I'm just messed up with these feelings swirling around my brain. I'm messed up by all the words I can't articulate. Until later, the latest, already too late. I need you. I want you to come back home. I miss you. I miss you. Why can't I tell you what I around my brain. Whirling around my brain. Whirling around my brain. Whirling around my brain and it's whirling around and around and around. Whirling around my brain. Ooh, and around and around and around and around and around and around. Whirling around my brain. Ooh, oh, oh. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Annie. It's a virtual applause.
Thank you. The applause was deafening in here.
Thank you. It's a kind of weird feeling to kind of have that, isn't it? Here we come. Here comes more applause. It's kind of weird. No, that's great. Thank you. Welcome everybody to Taken to the Streams. This is the second installment in our new normal, a weekly series of webinars brought to you by Music SA. My name is Joel Byrne. Nice to see you again for the second one. And I'm one half of the industry development team. And tonight we'll be discussing live streaming, a concept that initially started out as the alternative way for people to experience live music, but now seems to be the predominant way in which people experience live music in this current COVID reality. Before I introduce our panel, I'd like to acknowledge that for us in Adelaide, we're meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people, and we wish to pay respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land. We acknowledge that they are a continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. Firstly, again, another virtual applause for our stunning musical guest, Annie Siegman. Thanks, Annie. That was great.
Thanks, Annie.
Pleasure.
Annie has been a staple of the Adelaide music scene for over a decade. And in 2019, she launched new band Seabass, which she also currently manages. As well as being our musical guest, she also joins us as the person responsible for launching Knockoff Sessions, which is a series of live stream performances captured at the Weedy and broadcast every Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Welcome, Annie. Now, Annie, the Knockoff Sessions, can you give us a bit more of a background on what that is and where exactly it started and what it's all about?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, as soon as it was announced that we weren't going to be able to basically have gigs anymore, I was like, right, we need to do something immediately. So I partnered up with my friend Matt, who's an avid music lover and kind of just goes to gigs to record them just because he loves music so much. So we teamed up and we sort of run two sort of separate events. So we do Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, which is a really sort of intimate, stripped back kind of thing. And then Friday nights is at the Weedy. And it's sort of like a collaboration with them and Ria Loof and Kev Farrant, who's the sound guy there. So we get that we're kind of recreating the Weedy vibe, but at home.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, it's good. Great initiative. You know, it's necessary, especially this time. So we'll touch back with you on that a little bit more later. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for anybody that wasn't aware. Now on to the rest of our panel. I'll start with our interstate guests joining us tonight from the National Music Export Organisation, Sounds Australia. We have Dom Alessio. Hi, Dom.
Hello.
Dom is responsible for digital strategy at Sounds and is generally the go-to person for all music-related tech innovations and developments that are constantly seem to be occurring in our industry. From Isol-Aid Festival, arguably Australia's first live streaming virtual festival and one of the first initiatives of its kind to pop up in response to the social distancing restrictions, we have Shannen Egan. Hi, Shannen. And now onto our locals. We've got from Wizard Tone Studios, Adam Paige. Adam is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, music educator, and record producer. He's known widely for his critically acclaimed solo multi-instrumental looping performances, and has also written major works for the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra, the New Zealand Orchestra, and Zephyr Quartet. In 2014, Paige co-founded Adelaide's Wizard Tone Studios, and shortly after that, Wizard Tone Records. Adam is also currently curating a series of live streaming performances as part of a collaboration with Woodville Town Hall. How's that all going so far?
Yeah, we've done one performance and it went really, really well.
Yeah.
It was really slick, and had a couple of hundred people watching, which was fantastic. Well, a couple of hundred devices, so
Right.
who knows how many people were watching. So yeah, it was really positive, really, really positive.
And that's the Foyer Fridays, right? And that's the next one scheduled for this Friday?
The 15th, I believe.
15th.
So,
cool.
So
right.
next Friday with Aaron Thomas.
Ah, perfect, beautiful. Next we have Ben Golotta. Ben is co-founder of Local Film Production, Repeater, but the main reason for having him today is to have him give us some insight on his new project that he co-founded, Sunnyside Uploads. Sunnyside is Adelaide's newest producer of live streaming content and is fast becoming one of the go-to spaces for artists to perform live and get that much needed exposure, whilst also being a valuable resource for fans of live music who are currently missing on that most treasured of pastimes. How's it been going for you so far, Ben?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. We've just seen the growth over the past 2 or 3 weeks just excel. We because of my production company, we predominantly work in events and hospitality, and once COVID hit, it kind of affected us pretty enormously. So when you get a lot of time, you get a lot of time to work on some pretty cool stuff as well. So,
well, congratulations to it, because it's all that seems to be popping up on my feeds, and at the moment. So it's good to see. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
Now, last but certainly not least is we welcome Alana Jagt. Alana is here as the writer services rep from APRA AMCOS, and she's here to help us explain some of the info about how licensing works with regards to live streaming. Yes. But not only that, she also happens to be an artist in her own right and probably has some pretty valuable experience with regards to live streaming as a performer. Didn't you do one with knockoff sessions?
I've done one with both knockoff sessions and Sunnyside. So thanks, guys.
All right, well, you've obviously got some valuable information as well. So thanks for joining us again.
You're welcome.
Now, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Sian, who's going to start off our conversation. But before I do, I just wanted to all give you a heads up that we'll allocate some time at the end to answer any questions you might have. So please feel free to click on the Q&A icon, and we'll aim to either answer your questions as we go or reserve them for question time at the end. And for those watching us on Facebook, feel free to leave your queries in the comment section, and we'll also endeavour to get to them if they're not covered in a general discussion. Over to you, Sian.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us tonight. We know that our new reality is a lot of time on Zoom, so I appreciate you taking time out, and particularly Shannen and Dom. It's a little bit after those business hours, so really appreciate that. As this webinar is predominantly aimed at being a musician in the realm of live streaming, we wanted to kind of put it to the panel first of all to kind of chat about as audience members, as music lovers and as fans, what's something that's really, in all the live streaming that you've probably also consumed, what's something that's really spoken to you? Because I think that's something that's really important for musicians to think about is how they're engaging with their fans, what they're doing in that interaction, because, you can't read off of, you're looking at a screen or a camera or a phone most of the time. So what's something that's really really worked for you as an audience member, just something that, musicians can keep in mind when they are live streaming. I'll hit you up, Alana, first.
Okay, sure.
And an audience member, I think that will go around.
Sure. As an audience member, I feel like live streams at the moment, it's kind of like it's like a minefield of all the different types
of live streams that are going on out there, and some are better than others, which is what happens with gigs as well. I like it when people have put in a little bit of effort with, you know, the things in the backgrounds, and Annie's really good at that, and so is Sunnyside, with the way that their set is designed and everything. They sound really good. Left-handed guitarists as well. I appreciate it when people just spin the phone around, just, you know, just those little things. Your camera's better on that side. A plant in the background tends to just jazz things up a little bit. That plant doesn't usually live there.
I'm sure Bunnings is really benefiting from live streaming. The amount of monsteras that are probably in everyone's background. Just now. Yep, brilliant. I'm sure they're loving it. Yes.
Yeah. And like, as an artist, I've found that, I mean, it is weird. I get really badly into the habit of watching myself on the screen if it's there, if I can see it, like if my phone's turned a certain way. And I find it really distracting, because obviously there's like a second delay, and then you're like, oh, am I playing the wrong chord? And then this like mental thing happens. So that's something I found interesting, but it's been really nice to see the different types of people who tune in at the same time, like people from interstate that, you know, and like people from out of town that, you know, tuning in and like webcasting it to their like TV or whatever they're doing. It's really like a nice, wholesome thing that I found about it. So I think all in all, it's a good thing.
Okay. Cool. And Shannen, obviously Isol-Aid has seen, I think it's coming into its 8th weekend. So that's like a lot of artists, and I can imagine you've seen all types of things. I know early on there was like people streaming from bathrooms. Has there been kind of any highlights in that realm for you of like weird and wonderful places people are getting creative?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the highlights was on the first week with Ruby Gill, who streamed from a farm in a tractor. I think it's been really incredible to see all these artists focusing their energy in different ways of creativity and what they can do for their live streams. Like it's also interesting to see the people that decide to do it as a solo artist, and we've also seen full band setups. And we've seen home setups, and I've seen studio setups, and, you know, everyone kind of complements each other. There's something raw and there's something different with every single stream that's come through. I really like it when people use their projections in their rooms as well. I think there's been some really cool things, people playing around with lighting, and another highlight is a band called Baker's Eddie, who did it from a bathtub, and the bath was full.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I knew about the bathtub thing. I had no idea there was water. That's crazy. Dom, I know you've been kind of streaming a lot across this time, and you know, you live in such a digital world and had to kind of cancel a lot of overseas trips. Have you been kind of catching up on some of those, you know, international acts that you might have been seeing on those travels, or have you been kind of really focusing, you know, in your previous life in Home and Hose, you're so across Australian music? Have you been kind of really digging in there and finding some new favorites, or going back to some? Or
I've been watching a lot of Australian stuff, I think, and we might get into this later, but there's definitely a discovery issue when it comes to live streaming. There's just so much, and so it is really hard to discover what's out there. And so being so entrenched in Australian music, I do tend to watch a lot of the Australian streams, and I'm always watching Isol-Aid, and some of my favourite sets have been from Isol-Aid that I've seen. I think it was Zoe Fox and the Rocket Clocks, their set, which they just used all these like crazy filters, like she just used all these crazy filters while she was performing. It was like an acid trip. It was quite amazing. Private Function, who ate like Carolina Reaper chilies or something and then performed, like that was kind of madness. One that I've been watching religiously is Questlove from The Roots. He's been DJing every day. Yeah. And I'm kind of on this trip at the moment because I'm home so much. I'm using this time to try to plug gaps in my musical history, not like in my knowledge of music history. And Questlove, who's just such an incredible brain when it comes to music, like his DJ sets are amazing. He's got 4 terabytes of music to pull from. And not only that, he's like a brilliant storyteller and just can tell all these stories about like incredible famous people and get really in depth into the songs that he's DJing and talk about the bass player of this particular song who played on this song and this song and this song. And it's not something you would get generally from a DJ set because, you know, you don't go to a club to hear a DJ talk, but that interaction and that ability to communicate is such a strength of live streaming. And I feel like Questlove does that really well.
I think to bring up sorry, Joel.
I've been seeing a lot of DJ sets kind of pop up. NTS Radio, I don't know. They, if you kind of caught that, they did a remote utopia. It was kind of like a similar kind of concept that what Questlove's doing. But yeah, it's good to see kind of a bit of diversity in the kind of live streaming stuff. And it's not purely just live music. You've got DJs. I mean, locally we had one. I think we had one done this weekend, which is good to see. So yeah.
I think that point though, Dom, that you make of, you've touched on that interaction, you've touched on that uniqueness, you know, like, I don't know, maybe some bands do chili beforehand, before they do a live gig, but you know, that interaction and that breaking down that barrier, I think is a really important one for musos to think about, that it's not just, you know, hop on stage or hop behind the camera and go, like you need to think about how you're capturing it. In particular, when we're looking at a really saturated market, like there's so many options. So I think thinking about what you can do to make it different. And, you know, if it's jumping in a bath or it's on a tractor or it's, you know, thinking about your lighting, there's definitely avenues of making it different. Because I really enjoyed your article that was covered with Triple J about how it's not a substitute for live gigs. It's a different thing in that we're looking at, you know, it's a different offering. It's to supplement the fact that we don't have live music. So I think that's something I really wanted to touch on is making that difference. And Ben, I think, you know, with Sunnyside, obviously you guys are going from a venue, so it's slightly different to some of the formats that we've talked about, but are you guys finding that artists are seeking out to do something different, or are you guys adding that flair? Is that something that you've watched, or you've, you know, from behind the camera, or you've watched when you've consumed the music? Like what's been the difference that's really caught your eye in the live streaming world?
Oh, definitely what Dom said, the communication between the artists and the fans is by far the best part in my opinion. And what we've noticed as well as artists, the past few artists have really started to up the ante in terms of the set design, stage design, and it's really bringing like a new way for musicians to kind of have fun with it all as well, and to not just, you know, play their music, but it's also to showcase who they are as a person, and to really connect with their fans in a new way that they didn't really have before. So yeah, ultimately I think, yeah, it's the communication. It's really fun seeing people interact with their fans and on that level. Yeah.
Ben, how much of an advantage is it to have access to that venue that you're using?
It's enormous. It's enormous for a couple of reasons. Purely for the mixing and being able to record bands and stream through the audio side of things. Mm-hmm. But also we're very lucky, and at the Jade we have unbelievable internet. So we're able to the capacity of our streaming is
Gig City.
Yeah, exactly.
It's absolutely the Gig City, baby.
Yeah, super, super lucky in that aspect. So yeah, otherwise we'd be running off our phones, and I don't know if that'd go well.
Yeah, I think we talked about, a few of us have tethered this Zoom from our phones because things are just not as reliable as they are when everyone's at home on the internet. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And Adam, obviously you've performed in a few different spaces, and you've performed with, you know, solo, but in much bigger, you know, formats. Have you found that translates, you know, you're finding that when you're watching a solo versus, you know, a band, is there something that particularly pulls you more one way or the other, or is it about that connectivity? And is that something that as a performer you also really value?
Oh, absolutely. Connectivity is key, you know, like, there's something marvelous about like a singer-songwriter, one person on stage, you know, that just they draw you in, okay? But then there's also something marvelous about going to see an orchestra where you can see that each and every member is enjoying themselves and is wanting to make the most of this music, you know. And as soon as you see people just dialing it in, I switch off, okay? And so there's that connection. You always have to be conscious of your audience, I think. You don't have to play music that they necessarily will like, you know, but I think if you connect with them on a really honest level, then they will come with you. And I think that's where this online sort of live streaming thing is so super cool, because essentially you've got an audience of people that are all talking at the same time through the chat panel, right? And so, like, if all of these people were talking at a gig, you'd be like, shut up, you know, what do you know, but like there's people that are conversing with each other and like having a really, really good time in this chat thing. And going back to the streams that sort of have sort of meant something to me, my partner showed me Jen Clower's stream called Lesbian Play School. And it's fantastic. She basically just turns on her phone and just sits there. And for the first like 5 minutes, she's just watching the people come in, just going, hi, Jane. Hi, Bob. Hey, how you going? And it's just like, it's fascinating. You know, it's just such a warm person. And that really comes through on that platform, you know. And yeah, and I think we can take time as musicians now when we're performing as well to talk to our audience, to show them a little bit more of ourselves. And I think that's probably going to change things once we actually get live again. I think people are going to be so used to performing in this online world where you've just got a little bit more time, you're a bit more relaxed, you're a bit more conversational, you show a little bit more of yourself. And I hope that happens in the live realm as well. Well,
that obviously raises the question, is live streaming a COVID only endeavor, or is it
hell no. I think
is there life beyond it, you know?
Absolutely. I think we've got to remember that when we're performing live, we're performing to just this group of people that are there. Okay, it's localized, but we're getting better and better at this live thing now online, and it means that our music can be given to the world. You know, we're still going to do our gigs, but we can also do the online thing, and especially if everyone starts getting serious about monetizing their performances, then there's an added income stream, and you know, and just more opportunities to perform to people in Zimbabwe, in everywhere in the world. Okay, so I think we shouldn't drop this as soon as we can get back into the venues. I think we should get more elaborate and sort of own it. You know, this is our time.
Well, Shannen, do you kind of see Isol-Aid as being something that would kind of exist beyond the COVID pandemic?
Isol-Aid, I'm not sure. I think it has lasted a long time for how sustainable it actually is. But in regards to live streaming, I think definitely there's artists that we've spoken to who have actually said that they want it to be a part of their release campaigns. They want it to be a part of their project in a whole, because there are people out there who can't make it to gigs, and gigs aren't always accessible for everybody. So, you know, this is a new kind of product and platform that they can give their music. So that's been like a really incredible thing that people have been able to adapt and interpret it into it, and use it as a fresh new platform and new content.
Well, I mean, we could probably cover this in questions and answers, but obviously it seems to pop up a lot, especially with artists, and, you know, when it comes to them starting to live stream. Dom, as far as tech innovations, is there any kind of predominant ways to kind of get the most out of being a streaming performer or doing live streaming? I mean, is it just the go-tos?
I mean, I think it depends on what your goal is for the live stream. For a lot of people, it's about community building. It's about connecting with your fan base. It's about growing that fan base, and it's less about monetizing. Sometimes it's just about feeling the need to perform live to connect with people, something as simple as that. And so the ability with Instagram Live to just put up your phone, press a button and go live, I think was obviously really appealing to artists because it was so simple. When you move on to something like YouTube or Facebook, it's a little bit more involved. Then you start to look at, paywalled or pay-per-view platforms, and there's a multitude out there, which you may choose to do if you feel like that's going to be worthwhile, if you have a fan base to bring over who's going to pay for that. And I'm sure a lot of people here have heard that Facebook are looking to bring monetization to Facebook Live. They haven't released any details on that. They're hiring a lot of people in the music space at the moment. So I don't think it's going to happen for a little while, but that's on the cards. Obviously, they've seen the chatter with people wanting to earn money from their art, which I think is people should earn money from their art, but I also don't judge artists who just want to perform for free. So that's my kind of roundabout way of not answering your question. Saying you kind of just do what you want to do. I often say you should perform where where your fan base is. And I mean, I didn't even talk about Twitch, and Twitch has seen such huge growth during this kind of self-isolation time with musicians moving to Twitch, because that was a platform that was just initially built for live streaming games. That has monetization built in. It has a lot of things that are useful for artists who want to live stream, but also earn money from it.
Well, obviously monetization is a major aspect of moving forward with this and making it a viable thing. Adam, I just wanted to ask you about Crowdcast. Are you able to kind of give us some insight on that? Because as far as I know, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other people, but you are kind of the one that I am aware of that kind of utilize it.
Yeah. Look, I really like it because it's really easy, right? It's not free. It costs, I think it's like maybe $130 a year or something. But it's totally worth it. They take a little cut as well, but I feel that if their product is good and easy, user-friendly, then I'm willing to pay for that. And so essentially it's a streaming platform where people can, well, as an artist, I can set it up as a free gig, or I can set it up as a monetized gig. And then as soon as you press stop stream, it's up there forever, like a YouTube video, but it's still monetized. Okay, so I've been doing some gigs called improvisation for isolation, and at my studio, and I want to be completely honest here, just to tell people how well it can go. Like that first gig, I made $800, right?
Okay.
And that was like for like I set it to less than $5 or more. Okay, so you go in, you sign up, it's $5, you sit down, and here I am for an hour and a half doing my thing. Okay, and I was overwhelmed. I thought I was going to make maybe $100, right? So already it paid for its subscription, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone really dug it. And the thing for me, I mean, I've always chucked stuff up online for free, and I totally, as Dom was saying, I don't judge anyone that does it for free, because, we're all compelled. We have urges to perform and to perform to people. And, I absolutely, cherish that opportunity as well to do it live and for free. But we also have an incredible opportunity now to educate our fans, to educate our audiences as to other ways to consume the music, because we're so used to just, streaming for free or just consuming our music for free.
Well, there's a weird entitlement about art, isn't there? As far as
exactly, and so
digesting it, getting it, so
exactly, and so with Crowdcast, that's what it does. And you also, for me, the thing I liked about it is it is actually away from Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. You can link it. You're able to link it up to all those other platforms, but I like that it's away from that. It's a thing where people get a link, they go to this link that I put up to my audience, and there you are. You're not surrounded by all the noise. You know, the only noise you're surrounded by is mine.
Well, that's what people are locked into. So that's all good. So
yeah, totally. But I really like it. And I don't know any other, like I haven't researched any others. This was the first one that was recommended to me, and I've loved it from the beginning.
Beautiful. Well, look, for anyone that is kind of tuning in and they kind of want more info, by all means, please hit us up and we'll kind of try to get as much info back to you in regards to something like Crowdcast. But Ben and Annie, was there any kind of thought to monetizing what you guys are doing beyond this COVID stuff? Like what's your process there beyond what happens with COVID?
Yeah, beyond COVID, it's going to be an interesting thing for us. I think we will get a high interest for different musicians coming in and wanting us to continue it. I think they've seen the capacity for international audiences, underage fans, people that just can't go to their shows. You know, we might even be able to start streaming live performances with crowds, you know, in the room as well, just to kind of, you know, open the doors to all the people that can't actually be there. So it's going to be interesting to see how we go in terms of, because what we do, it takes, you know, quite a few people, and the production kind of value is a bit higher. So it's going to be a costly venture. So it's about working out the budgeting going forward as well, and you know, whether it's going to be worth it for the artist to do it in the first place as well. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, that's for sure. But we'll wait and see.
You guys have essentially, in some way, a lot of these live streaming platforms, and Isol-Aid included in this, have kind of taken on the role of promoter. You become a promoter and you've created a brand. And I know with all of the outlets, it's all kind of donations, and some of them are for, you know, in the case of Sunnyside, that's to kind of cover some of the production costs. Am I correct? You know, you've got such a large crew.
Yeah, no, at the moment it's majority to artists.
To the artists?
We just want to make sure the artists are being paid, and then, you know, we'll sort ourselves out in the end. But yeah.
And with Knockoff, Annie, is that donation, or I know that you also were looking at Patreon at some point, but is that linked with Knockoff?
Yeah, so we've sort of got a bit of an archival thing happening on Patreon that, we're sort of working on getting just like 1 or 2 songs from the artists from there, and as that sort of builds up, we'll feed that back to them sort of in an even split. The way that we've sort of got it, I guess money was never the main goal for us. It was the connection side of things, and making sure that, you know, Adelaide knows that we've still got our wonderful artists here, and just connecting, as a lot of you said previously, connecting in a new way, and letting those artists sort of reveal their craft in a different sort of format. So it is predominantly donations, whether that's to our Knockoff Sessions one, or we'll plug the artists if they've prepared their own.
And you're generally getting a lot of inquiries from artists to perform, both of you, for Sunnyside and Knockoffs, or are you kind of hitting up artists yourself?
Initially for Knockoffs, like, it's, I think now that people know that it's sort of happening, and they're probably all sort of tapped into trying to get their streaming thing off the ground, realizing all the webcams are sold out and all of that stuff. Now we're starting to get a few more people sort of inquiring, but initially it was just sort of drawing on networks, and
And what about you, Ben? Are you taking offers, or getting agents hit you up to kind of want to start doing Sunnyside?
Yeah, we were exactly the same. Started off with our own little network, but it's kind of blown up a bit. So we've had to kind of start to manage that in the back end, because we can only really, you know, function for, you know, 2 or 3 shows a week, 3 maximum, you know, because we're doing it for free. So it is a tough thing as well. But we do have like an applications page on our website for artists to go into and submit their interest as well. So it's going pretty crazy.
Well, I guess that leads to Isol-Aid. How does that work with you, Shannen? You've obviously got some pretty major artists playing and performing. Is it, in terms of securing artists, is it as you would a conventional gig? Are you hitting up agents or agents hitting you up, or how's the process work for that?
I think as the week shifted, so did the programming.
Mm-hmm.
At first, maybe the first 3-4 weeks, we was programming 74 contemporary artists over the space of 12-hour 2 separate days. It was kind of easy to kick that off because we had people at the beginning of the project like Angie McMartin,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of having a name like that on your programming, it kind of just organically brings other artists to kind of pitch themselves, and for the agents to pitch them as well. So maybe the first 2 weeks of programming, it was just kind of us looking as a promoter, looking at, well, what is relevant, what is on, like who was cancelled tours, or who was meant to be playing the cancelled festivals as well.
Right.
So it was able to build up a lineup through that. And then as the weeks went on, we had agents starting to pick management and labels. And then that kind of led into curating with particular kind of established agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd start running their own segments as well, because as you probably can imagine, there's only so many contemporary artists in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally, completely understand. That's what I'm wondering. At what point do you kind of need to start diversifying and start kind of, getting into kind of some further realms of the music landscape? Maybe start doing some EDM or something like that. At what,
Yeah, definitely. And we did try and spread out our diversity in styles as much as we could as well. I think as well is that people have to remember that this is coming from their own artist platforms. So at the beginning of Isol-Aid, it was very beneficial for the smaller artists because they were cross-sharing audiences with some of the bigger artists on the lineup. People were being directed to each other's Instagram pages, and that kind of meant that there was a new kind of promotion that people could feed off one another.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of like built this sense of community as well, and a unison that we could feel kind of flow through Isol-Aid. So yeah, and we made sure that everybody throughout the programming as well was using things like Linktree, so that when people were being directed to their platforms.
Well, on that, you're putting a lot of faith in artists to kind of come ready to come prepared, be able to perform. Obviously, when you are doing a set, when you are doing a performance, there's a lot of technical issues. How hard is it to kind of make sure these artists are ready to run out a live streaming festival? Is there a lot of kind of checking in with them and making sure everything's right? In terms of levels, how's the logistics on something like that?
It was all very DIY to start with. We probably about 3 or 4 of us worked off one Google sheet for probably the first 3 or 4 weeks. We had about a 3-day turnover to program 74 artists. So, it was a lot more easier communicating with agents and managers because overall that's their job. And another thing is that nobody really had anything else to do. It's the same when you're booking artists for live festivals and live performances as well. You heard that everybody has got their worksheets. They know when sound check is. They know.
But generally that they've got a TM. They've got a sound tech, a mixer. But now it's just them. They become so self-reliant. It's like, I'm sure the first one you were like, oh shit, is this actually going to work?
Yeah. It actually worked really well. I think everybody was really excited to be a part of it. It was something new and out of the norm. So I guess everybody just kind of jumped onto the train.
Well, yeah, congratulations, because it's a great format. Sorry, off you go, Sam.
I was just going to ask Shannon. So we've seen a number of different kind of platforms. Obviously, monetizing your live stream as an artist is really important. You're trying to generate income. And I think there's a whole nother discussion about how that works for your brand and how regularly you should be doing it and how you connect with your fans. But then I think there's also a whole other strain live streaming, which is about benefiting the crew and supporting the overall industry, because, you know, musicians have that direct connection with fans. And one thing that Isol-Aid's been really focused on is about donations towards Support Act, and Support Act has that functionality of being able to support the entire industry, and particularly when you know, there's a number of people that are completely, you know, out of work now because the live industry has been put on hold, and Support Act is a great place for them to turn when they can't, you know, monetize, you know, being a TM or a lighting tech, or you know, a session drummer or anything like that. Have you guys found that that's what musicians have also been trying to use Support Act for, you know, and then have other avenues for themselves? I know there's a couple of other platforms that talk about kind of supporting their crew or their greater team. Have you found that through Support Act? And then obviously you're also a manager as well, and thinking about that, you know, has that been something for the artists that you're working with at this time?
Yeah, obviously we had one direct fundraiser for Isol-Aid for the Support Act, which is the one that was set up by Charlotte Abrams. So when we were seeing the numbers coming through, we were seeing it come through that specific campaign. I think the whole kind of like monetization around the artists, because everything, you know, it's seen as a fundraiser, it was raising awareness and funds, is when we were setting them up with their link trees. So making sure that people were directed to their digital platforms, making sure that people were directed to their merch, that when them platforms were shared, that it had every single bit of opportunity for them to be able to, you know, sell themselves as an artist. So that's how kind of like things started generating in the beginning. And I guess as an artist manager as well, is that I have actually been seeing a few more Paige streams offers come through to my artists. And this is, you know, it's purely things like brand sponsorship, you know, brands are getting on top of it. Everybody's seeing this as, you know, the new now of live music. So, you know, the world as a whole is just kind of coming around to use that as the platforms that they need at the moment. So yeah, and I guess like there's the Support Act aspect, and then there's actual a guaranteed aspect to it as well. And you know, as them guaranteed offers keep coming through, hopefully we can see people earning some commission off that as well. I guess everybody knows that it's quite a risky industry to work in as an agent or a manager. You're working off commission. So yeah, I guess just seeing stuff like that come through.
Definitely. And you know, as a manager myself, I remember kind of seeing those first weeks of, you know, just every live gig being wiped out. And, you know, for a lot of people, that was, you know, the live realm is the largest form of income for any artist. So then all those people that rely on the income, you know, taking a percentage of that. So that affects that. There's such a trickle down effect. And, you know, there's some large numbers of the industry effects, which is, yeah, obviously very sobering, but really great to see the amount of positivity and kind of perseverance that's come through as well. I wanted to also talk about, you know, that crossover with brands and that guarantee format of streaming. You know, that's definitely grown in the last few weeks. In terms of your responsibilities and your alternative forms of income, Alana, I'd love to hear a little bit kind of on the licensing and just that side of things for artists. I think it's still, I know the artists that I've dealt with, it's already a confusing area. So then when you're taking it into another realm, in amongst trying to get yourself around like live streaming and different software and different, all of these things, licensing is probably the last thing, because you can just click live and go and there's no barrier. So yeah, I'd love to get a little bit of insight on that from you as well.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I just want to let everybody out there know that while I work for APRA, I am the writer services rep, and usually with licensing questions, I take them on notice. I did have a big session today with somebody in our media licensing team to prepare, but there might be some things I don't know the answer to, but I will strive to get that answer. So like the landscape has changed really, really quickly and grown quite dramatically in the last few months. I've never really had any questions from anybody about streaming, and now we're getting a lot of them, and our media licensing team have been working overtime to try and get things sorted out. As of 5 p.m. today, APRA updated their news article on streaming, so there's some more information there. We know that it's been a little bit confusing because APRA's still trying to work a few things out too, particularly with venues and licensing and all that kind of stuff. As a musician, really the main thing you need to know first up is that if you're using Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or one of those platforms to live stream your own works on your own pages and you're not monetizing those streams, you don't need a license from APRA. You can go and do it so long as it's your own songs. That's the number one thing. APRA have license agreements in place with those platforms to cover that use. In regards to commercialization of live streams or monetization of them, or live streams made available on unlicensed platforms, the following applies. If a writer is only using their own works, they can apply for a license back. Otherwise, an APRA license is required, and that includes donations. That's because APRA members assign their rights to collect to APRA. So APRA is going to try and collect for music uses if it's being commercialized. So you can apply for a license back through us, which basically tells APRA that for, let's say, the knockoff sessions, I don't want APRA to license the knockoff sessions for my works, for my performances. Don't chase them for royalties. I've licensed directly with them. So that's what we're recommending some artists do. Usually there is a fee, but that's more for complex licensing, like license back forms, where these sorts of ones really aren't complex. So the fee will generally be waived. If a writer is using a cover, you need to get a license. So just to be aware of that. And if you have songs that are co-written, you really do need to also have permission from your co-writers and have them submit a license, sign the license back form too. And if you're publishing, that's another layer. Like if you're published, sorry.
Just
so
on that, Alana,
yes.
how do you secure a license if you're playing a cover? Just in the simplest terms, like what's the steps?
Email us. So you can email me at sa@apra.com.au and I'll point you in the right direction. You can also email directly our online team, which is online@apra.com.au, and they'll switch you out. Generally, no, forget what I was going to say. So that's sort of, you just get in touch with us and we'll sort it out. We don't have an online form for that, but for the license back, we do. So if you were to go onto the APRA website and type in license back into the search function, the license back form will come up and you can just say, yep, I played at the knockoff sessions. This is my set list. This was the date I did it, and hit the submit button. Amazing. And just to be safe, you can download that as a PDF and send it to me as well, just to make sure we get it.
And no excuses. No excuses if you're watching this and you're performing live streams, you're doing covers, you're aware of what needs to be done. So please,
Alana,
take the proper precautions.
Just hypothetically,
Yes.
are APRA actively working with those platforms that have the generalized licenses in place to establish whether or not people are playing their own music?
I actually don't know. I would assume
I've just seen a very large increase in covers, and just
Yes.
whether or not artists should be a bit more aware of that than they maybe are.
I think they should be more aware of it. It's possible they'll get a takedown request.
Yeah.
If, that's a possibility that will happen. But yeah, if you're watching this, please just be aware.
With Alana.
Yes. Generally, so we've got something called an online mini license, which won't apply to an individual. You won't need to take out an online mini license if you find that on the website anywhere. If you're sort of just an individual doing a one-off show, you won't need it. But if you're more of a, like, you're doing it regularly, or you're like a small organization who is, you know, doing live streaming fairly regularly, an online mini license might be the best way to go, because that will cover a bunch of stuff, which again, just email me or email online@apra.com.au. That's the team.
Awesome, thank you.
Does any of that make sense?
If it doesn't make sense,
everybody,
please get in touch with Alana. We'll make the email available just in case you didn't catch that. Yeah, because we think it's a really important one. And we've also suggested in previous webinars and communication that people should be making sure they're across their registrations of their songs and their works, and really getting on top of that. This is a great time. Hey, Luke, to make sure you're doing that. Also, I wanted to touch base just on LPRs for live streaming. Yes. That live streaming is with set lists that are monetized. Is it all, it's only the monetized ones that are being paid LPRs? Is that correct?
I haven't had any notification that anything is really going on at the moment with that. We are recommending that for all of your live streaming sets, please record like where you live streamed, if it was like monetized, who you did it with, if you did it through like a third party, and your set list, because if there ends up being a scope for us to pay LPRs for this period, then, you know, you've got that information handy. It's going to be really hard to find links and that sort of thing, like if you leave it to the last minute and it goes ahead. So that's sort of all APRA's recommending at the moment, which is what lots of musicians do and what I would do. But we're really recommending that you just keep track. Just keep a little diary or a spreadsheet. That'd be good.
Musicians have never left their LPRs till late. Never.
I will say that APRA's developing an extra part on the website, so it'll hopefully be made really clear in the coming weeks that there'll be a section that's for music customers. If you're not a musician, but you've got a business where you're streaming and there's monetization, you can go to that part of the website and you can see exactly what you need. And if you're a musician, you can go, yep, that's the musician part of the website where I can find out about live streaming. So we don't have that at the moment, but I was advised today that it's being worked on, and I think the business one is coming up in a few days if it's not already live now, and the section for musicians will come up in the next couple of weeks as well. We'll email all the members about that. It'll be an app wrap.
Awesome. Dom, we just wanted to ask you, I think you might be one of the best people to talk about this. Obviously live streaming, unlike gigs, doesn't have any boundaries. There's no kind of restrictions on that. Do you know, kind of through, you know, the Sounds network and obviously particularly in the manner of the South by cancellation, you guys just jumped straight on and had planned to do, you know, a live stream of those artists that had missed out getting that integral industry connection at South by. Are you seeing that, you know, international industry are, you know, tuning into some of these live streaming options? Are they kind of wanting to see what artists are doing in that way, or are they, you know, just kind of working out what they're doing? Because, you know, obviously there are a lot of people impacted by COVID around the world and maybe don't have jobs and things like that. But is that something that you've kind of heard on the grapevine or people are getting in touch about?
Short answer is no. Long answer is, I think it is quite hard to downplay just how dire it is for the global live music industry at the moment. And I don't think that will come as a surprise to anybody. Yeah. The uncertainty of when we can have large gatherings, the uncertainty around which companies will survive, means that people aren't really future focused at the moment. They just want to make sure that they can survive, pay their rent and eat for that day. I think, so no, I don't think international industry are necessarily engaged with live stream performances. Having said that, that is starting to change. And there are a few things that we're working on with some of our international counterparts, because I think as countries start to kind of flatten the curve and restrictions are being walked back a bit, particularly in Europe, they're now starting to look at the recovery process and what will come of that. And there's started to be a bit more engagement from the European industry, we've found. America is a complete nightmare, and who knows what's going on there. And pray for everybody in America right now. But particularly, but with the European industry, there's at least started to be some interest in kind of like a business to business connection. Because I think, you know, everyone is kind of in the complete dark about what the next steps are. So once you start to get industry talking, then there will, you know, that idea of connecting with artists will follow with that. Of course, nobody knows when we'll be able to fly overseas yet. So that, you know, I feel like once we know the answer to that, there, you know, things will roll on.
There will be champagne popped on that day. I know I am definitely just like, give me some deadline.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of being able to fly to another country before next year is probably pie in the sky. And then, you know, will there be quarantine restrictions? Like, you know, at the moment, if you come into Australia, you've got to be in quarantine for 14 days. How long will that last for? You know, the whole world isn't going to open up at the same time. It's going to be country to country. And so, you know, you just have to be, and this is a word that gets overused a lot, but, you know, you're just going to have to be agile, and you're going to have to be future facing and nimble and think about what could be coming. And I think it's interesting, you know, Alana talking about before about, you know, there's so many questions about live streaming. It's kind of insane that we're asking these questions now, because these formats have been around for years. And so I think the music industry as a whole, from the top to the bottom, needs to start being a bit more, I guess, lateral thinking in the possibilities, you know.
Well,
and that's going to be true for the next couple of years. And it's going to be looking at the situation, looking at what's available, but also kind of thinking about what people are going to want and bring them music in a way that they're going to want to consume it.
Well,
so I went from that question and took it in a completely different direction.
Great.
No,
That's
it's fine. It's fine. When the cancellation of South by was announced, how quickly did you send the email about activating that live streaming idea you had in mind?
I was actually in Adelaide for WOMAD when South by got cancelled. It was on a Saturday.
Yeah.
We all 8 a.m.
8 a.m. The Sounds Australia team got on a call. On the Monday, we made the decision that we're going to do a live stream event. And we'd never done anything like this before. Because at that time, we were like, this is the best way to support the artists who were going to showcase at South by Southwest. The event was called 3 for the Stream. We're going to run it at Bakehouse Studios in Melbourne. It was going to be 3 songs from 19 acts across 3 stages. We were starting it at 9 a.m. because that would have aligned nicely with Eastern time in the States and also LA time. And yeah, we went from zero knowledge on how to organize a live stream to announcing it on the Friday, so 5 days later, with an entire lineup. By Monday, we had to cancel because Daniel Andrews called a state of emergency for Victoria, and we couldn't have the amount of people we needed in a venue, so it got cancelled.
And then you
cried. And at that stage, we didn't know. We just didn't know how bad it was going to be. And yeah, so it's sad that never came off. But I learned how to put on a live stream event, so silver lining from that. But look, there's so much incredible music that comes out of Australia, and the international music industry is not going to stop wanting to work with Australian acts. Like it's going to happen. And you know, that might include more record deals and publishing deals and things that focus on songwriting in the short term before we start to think about Australian artists getting signed to, you know, Paradigm Booking Agency in the States or X-Ray Touring in the UK, you know, like the music industry, despite the fact that we're still all in isolation, is still a global industry. You can consume music globally. I've been listening to Kraftwerk all day. They're a German act. Like that's not gonna change.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
It's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you know, thankfully, adapt or die is a motto that's been utilised by the music industry at the moment. So, thankfully.
Yeah, you know, as I heard the other day, you know, information is abundant, but attention is scarce. And when you're thinking about a live stream, you have to think that it is not like a regular gig, because with a regular gig, people buy a ticket and they go to a venue. Now you are in competition with every other form of media. And I heard a staggering figure the other day that the global gaming industry made $10.8 billion in March. To put that into context, the global recorded music industry made $19 billion for the year in 2018. So, I mean, gaming is winning. If this was a competition, like, gaming is winning hands down, because they do two things really well. Gaming is entertaining and it's social, and it's the two things that people want now. And for me, and you know, we mentioned this before, the live streams that work really well, I think, bring those two things together. They have a sense of community. There's that social aspect, which people are craving because we're all indoors, and it's entertaining, which people want. So when you are thinking about what you want to do for your live stream, remember that somebody could be on Twitch watching somebody game. Somebody could be watching normal people on Netflix. Somebody could be playing on their Nintendo Switch. All of those things are they are vying for the audience's attention. And so you have to give people a great reason to tune in to watch you perform. And if you're just performing, they can watch a video on YouTube. So you have to give them something more.
Make it unique.
Yeah.
I think that also speaks to, I'd love to put it to, you know, anyone that wants to answer this, about the branding, like in terms of for your brand, or, you know, when you are competing against all of those platforms, or, you know, how regular should you be streaming, and, you know, how long do you want to keep it to, like, shorter, you know, Isol-Aid's done, you know, those 20-minute sets. Sunnyside, you guys do 2 sets, is that correct? Like, you have like an interval in between, and there's, you know, variances between that. Is that something that for the musicians on the panel, you know, you've been really strategic about, because you want to make sure that, you know, at the end of this, you can still demand a ticket price? Or is it just about getting as many, you know, as many eyes as possible? You know, I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts on how you retain kind of your brand equity at this time, in amongst, you know, trying to capture the audience, but also competing with every other screen, you know, possible.
I'll jump in. I think for CBAS, like, we're trying to keep it pretty limited as to what we do, and sort of just generate hype with, you know, what's coming in the future in terms of recording and that sort of thing. But when we've only done one stream with Sunnyside as a full band, and I've done a couple of spots sort of here and there, but I'm keeping it pretty limited and quite spread out, and making sure that I'm, like, on different platforms to try and sort of hopefully captures the attention of new people, but also try and maybe catch those that might have been on Twitch watching some gaming, and just tap into different times, because you'll get different people at different times. It's so particularly with the solo sets that I've done, I think certainly focusing on that connection and interacting, and making sure that it's at okay quality. So, like, for Instagram Live, I'll plug this little bad boy, the little Apogee mic, into my phone, just to give it something a little bit better quality than, you know, your phone microphone. And that, because it's pretty taxing, like watching a lot of live videos one after the other. And, you know, we shouldn't have to expect our fans to kind of look at, you know, poor audio and internet and all of that sort of thing, just because, you know, that's the way we can give it to them. So yeah, I think it's just, I've sort of gone off topic, but yeah, just trying to
There's no going off topic.
It's all about.
There's no going off topic. This is free form.
Brilliant. But yeah, just making sure that there is a point of difference. We're capturing, still keeping the essence of sea bass there, but giving little sort of different bits to different people.
I think consistency is key, and if you're going to live stream, you know, make it the same time every week and get people into the habit, it kind of becomes like a television show. And I think that's kind of a really good way to think about your live streaming. It's like, if you have, and we're talking about the old days of linear TV here, but if you were to, you know, you tuned in every week to watch an episode of a show, if every episode was exactly the same, you would stop watching. So every episode needs to be different. And it's the same thing with the live stream. I think when you get people used to you streaming at that particular time, it becomes a habit, it becomes an appointment for them. And every week they're tuning in because it's something different.
That's a great analogy.
Definitely, we've noticed that we have like an engagement rate of about 14 minutes. We're streaming for around an hour, and that's purely based on, you know, we want the artist to perform an entire set like they would a regular gig. But it's also a way for us to kind of help with our donations as well. So if we're offering up some, you know, we've offered up gin and some, this week I think we're doing sunglasses, you know, some prizes to the audience members as well. So the longer we have it running, the more opportunity we have people to jump in late as well and to kind of tap into it. Obviously there's more opportunities to donate afterwards, but it kind of creates that kind of hour of community that people can jump in and chat, and I think extending it to that level kind of, yeah, gives just that little bit more opportunity, at least for us at the moment when we're trying to build our audience as it is. So, you know, throughout that hour, we're going to get people sending links to friends and jumping in and liking it. So it's about growth. And I think eventually we'll kind of tap into a perfect time slot and, you know, an amount of time. But it's just a matter of working out, like we're still trying to figure out what days of the week work best. You know, we found out that yes, maybe Fridays at the moment work pretty well because people are kind of hanging out and want to have a few drinks. And then we figure, okay, once, you know, these restrictions stop, when do we go from there? Do we go on a Monday? But Mondays, generally people aren't willing to spend money. But it's just a whole, we don't know how to deal with it yet. But yeah, it's just a matter of figuring out really what is working. And we've got to experiment for the next few weeks until we really find that sweet spot.
Awesome. Joel, you're going to ask?
Well, we've got to start wrapping this up. So we might just cut to one of the only questions that we've got that's come through. And it's pretty much just based around the specifics of how to put on a gig or how to put on a live streaming performance. I might put this to Ben actually, just because you're currently doing it at the moment and you're utilizing a space to the best of your ability. They're just wondering if there's any advice for a venue looking to set up a streaming program for live performance, theatre or music. Any gear tips or anything like that?
Oh man, there's a multitude of things you can do, and it really depends on budget and kind of what you want to get out of it. I mean, number one, your best friend if you're doing bands is using OBS, which is an open source broadcasting software. So it's free and it's so easy to use, and that's what's able, you can stream from OBS to whichever service you like, and then so once you've got your OBS, then the next part is the quality, I guess, you're going to go for. So it's about getting cameras and then capture cards in order to use your whatever quality you want into your OBS. So yeah, it really depends what you want to go for. So let's say you want to go straight to Facebook. You have to know the limitations of Facebook. So Facebook only streams at 720p, whereas if you want to go direct to Twitch, which has your donations, or YouTube, that can be HD or 4K if you have that kind of power. But yeah, it's kind of a loaded question because if you want to go the full high production, then you're going to have to spend the money in order to do that as well. But if you can do amazing things on a low budget too. If you can source the gear for friends as well, it's just a matter of, yeah, gathering the right materials. But OBS is your best friend. Get a good interface, good microphones, and a decent camera, and you're good to go.
The main battle as well is I know it's been mentioned before, but the internet bandwidth. Like there's no point running these fancy cameras if you can't actually get that uploaded at a decent speed without sacrificing audio quality as well. So I think, yeah, with the streaming thing, especially, it starts somewhere. You can always build on it. That's certainly what we did with knockoff sessions, and I know our setup's fairly simple, but we still use OBS and run a couple of mics through a mix pre, and we're actually using iOS devices as our cameras because the quality's pretty good, and bandwidth will allow for that. So and it just makes our setup a lot easier as well, and mobile, which is something that we want to do down the track. But yeah, that internet, Australian internet speeds.
Also, if you have the resources, reach out to some small production companies like mine, for example. They're desperate for work, and this is the type of thing that they're jumping into as well. So if you know any young filmmakers, videographers, just ask their help, because they'll help you out as much as possible.
I think that's a really good point, is that, you know, all of them are out of work as well to a degree. The creative community, you know, as musicians and the music industry, we rely on a lot of that community, and they're also suffering at the moment. So engaging those people who might be out of work is a great way of building your community at the same time. So
we're pretty lucky in SA that we can have 10 people in a room.
Yes.
Or depends on how big the room is. You know, that's essentially, you know, we've been able to do what we can because of those, you know, the nice restrictions that we have, so to speak. Yeah, we're very, very lucky. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's we've been blessed in that way, that's for sure.
Can I add just something about the internet as well? Ethernet cable. If you are able to use an Ethernet cable, because your upload speeds are far higher on using a cable. At the studio, I went from I think it was about 20 megabits upload, and you need at least 25 for HD. And as soon as I plugged it into the Ethernet, I got 97.
Wow.
So it was a huge difference, and all I had to do was go down to JCar and get a 30-meter Ethernet cable and run it from the, you know, the router next door, and made it heaps better.
Yeah. Also, if anyone's in doubt as well, you can always pre-record sets and pre-record footage and stream that as well. Yeah. And that also, if you're a solo artist, it gives you an opportunity to, you know, type and, you know, be a part of the community at the same time. So yeah. The thing with OBS that I think everyone should realize if you're going to go with something like that is there's about a 20-second buffering sort of lag. So that raises the quality because you're not like live in the moment, but that also creates a little bit of a disconnect I've found with the chat bar. But you know, that's cool, because I think if we get better quality sound and visuals, then that's kind of for sure more important, I think, you know, when we're sort of moving ahead to try to get the best quality possible, you
know. I think that's kind of going to pretty much wrap us all up very soon. Is there anything else? Obviously, I know we could talk about this for a lot longer, but is there anything else that, you know, you guys have either very quickly or for a long time dealt with live streaming and digital platforms? Is there anything else that you would advise the musicians, particularly watching this, about what they should be thinking about with live streaming as they go into the future, and any tips and tricks that you might have for them? Feel free to add now.
I might say one thing. the beauty of this time is that it's such a great opportunity to build your fan base and build new fan bases anywhere in the world. So if you can, I think it's really important to try to capture who's actually watching your performances. If you can get an email address, if you can add them to a newsletter, and make sure you own that information, because there will come a point when we can all go to gigs and we can be together again, which is going to be so amazing. And if you have built a fan base and new fans over this time, as soon as you can play IRL gigs again, you've got a whole bunch of people that you can just email and be like, hey, I'm putting on a show. And you know what, at that stage, people will probably be really fanging to get to a gig. So they'll be like, sweet, I'm going to buy a ticket and come along. So as much as you can, try to capture that data and keep it for yourself. Don't let Instagram and Facebook own it all. Try to get some emails, add them to a simple old newsletter. But yeah, this is a great time to make new fans here and all around the world.
I think that's a good point. The conventional tools still exist, and they can only be aided by this current situation. So don't forget them. This is just a temporary solution to a short-term problem, not a long.
Yeah, and I think don't be afraid to ask for the email addresses as well. You know, I did a show last week at Woodville Town Hall, and the you know, one of the people that was running it down there, she put out a message to the people that were watching, like, you know, who would like to be a part of the, you know, the E-list of the artists, and we got 60 email addresses.
Awesome.
You know, so, you know, you just got to ask, and people are like, yeah, we want to know more about this stuff. So I think as consumers, people are excited about what people are doing here, and you know, and I've found from experience they're pretty sympathetic to quality, you know, because we're all learning this, you know, bit by bit, and people just want to stay connected with the arts and with music, and so we have to give them the opportunity to come with us, though, you know.
Yep.
I just wanted to add that if you have been thinking about live streaming but haven't done it yet because you're not so sure about it, just to give it a go, because it's here now, and now's your time to get good at it, because it's not going to go away. Like it's just going to be a thing from now forward, so you might as well get good while you're sitting at home, you know, wondering whether you should be doing it or not.
And also I'm pretty sure the OzCo grants are still up for, you know, you can get money to update your equipment at home. You know, there's no cutoff date for these grants. You know, and so if you don't have an interface, if you don't have a microphone, look at the grants. There's the OzCo ones. There's, I think, right, yeah, there's obviously the Arts SA ones. Yeah, just look around. There's money out there to support us with this exact thing, you know, to update your home studios, you know, jump on it. There's money there.
I'll reiterate, if there is a grant that currently exists out there in Australia, it's going to be on our resource page via our website. So please check there, where it's updated daily. There's COVID-centric grants coming up all the time. So yeah, please check there all the time.
And I think just be kind to yourself. You know, like, don't be too hard on yourself if you do a live stream and 5 people tune in, or you think you've flubbed it. It's like, you know, there are a lot of people doing it tough, and you know, like Adam said, people will forgive you if there's, like, you know, the sound doesn't work for one moment or the video doesn't work. Just like, be nice to yourself and have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great sentiments to sign off on. Thank you very much, panelists. Really appreciated having your insight. Very valuable. And thanks to you, the attendees. Obviously, if we had no one to speak to, it would be kind of a weird conversation. So thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate it. We'll be back next week with our third webinar in the series. Look for an announcement on that on Monday. But thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. Oh, Thursday night. Shit.
Just don't mean it.
Matter anymore.
Thank you, everybody.
day
Good to
even is
see
it?
you.
See ya. Thanks.
Bye.